Hello, my friends. It's me here today, all by myself, doing a little solo episode, which if you've been paying attention, you'll notice I got a little bit off my rhythm and we did a bunch of guest episodes in a row. And yeah, it just kind of happened. And I was like, let's just run with the guest episodes. I was feeling a little bit under the weather. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed those, but I've missed you being able to chat one-on-one. And I have a few little announcements. So we will be going back to the usual format of sort of alternating the guest episodes in the solo episodes. And if you guys have opinions on format, you can always email me at askasextherapistpodcast@gmail.com with any suggestions or feedback. But also, we're kind of blowing up on Spotify right now, which is pretty great. I was like, oh, why are my downloads going up? And I just looked at the data before I hopped on here, and I was like, wow, normally Spotify is kind of a smaller percentage of the downloads and new followers, and it's actually like way outpacing Apple right now. So thank you to all my new Spotify listeners. It's great to have you here. So today we're going to be talking about a very common dynamic about what to do with mismatched libidos, specifically when it just feels like pressure, where there's a higher drive partner and that person's kind of like, this is a need for me. I need to get this need met, right? This is important for me to feel connected. I have more energy. I'm more productive when I'm having regular sex. This is like my love language, right? And then the lower drive partner is often kind of like, oh, like I have to do this to keep you happy, or like, I love you. And so I want to keep you happy and I got to do this, but I have like no desire anywhere in my bones. That it's just not there. So then it kind of feels like, oh, okay, I have to do this. And then there's like dread sometimes. And then there's kind of like the don't touch me or like, or I'm checking out mentally during sex. And then the higher drive partner is kind of like, no, I want this to be authentic. Like I want to actually connect with you. I don't want you to just be phoning it in, and then you're like, the lower drive partner might be like, oh, I'm bad, or what's wrong here, or I'm not doing my job as a partner and I'm failing them. So there can be a lot of different emotions that come up in this scenario. Obviously, what I just shared is not a particular person, but it's just a pattern I see a lot with a lot of different couples that I work with as clients. And in fact, it could be the number one issue that I'm seeing with clients. I often see mismatched libidos, and I think this is one of the most common patterns within that dynamic. So what we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about the common pattern. We're going to talk about where people tend to go wrong when they're trying to work on this on their own. And then we're going to talk about what it takes to reverse this. So stay to the end if you want the solution, basically. And if you're curious about this topic, there are a couple other episodes. In episode 12, I get into consent and the idea of pressuring and pestering and how that can be a consent problem and when you get into that issue versus just expressing your emotions. Hint, it's a gray area. And then the libido episode is episode 7. So those are two of my popular episodes. Also, if you're not already following the show, give us a follow. We've got some fun stuff coming up with more guests, and we've got a listener Q&A coming up in a couple weeks where people submit their juicy questions, which I love. So we'll also put the link to submit your questions if you want me to kind of go over whatever's happening in your sex life and give you some free sex advice. Again, you can email us, askasextherapistpodcast@gmail.com. Or I'll put a link for you to submit anonymously if you want to do it that way. Either way is great. So let's get into it. So what's the common pattern? The common pattern is one person feels like their needs are not being met. And sometimes even when I start working with clients, like they've already realized, like, we're going to work on this. We're going to invest in this. We're going to find an expert. We're getting some help. Even then, it can feel like, oh God, this has just been going on for so long. This has been going on for months or years. And like, is this even going to change? And there can just be some frustration. I think in this scenario, the person can often take it personally. And that's part of where we start to go wrong in terms of like, this is maybe working against us in terms of solving the issue instead of working for us. And then on the other side of the pattern, that the lower desire partner is often feeling guilt. So they're kind of feeling like, I know my partner's frustrated with me. I feel bad I can't meet their needs. Or they're feeling pressure. And that's part of the title of this episode, right? So whether or not the higher desire partner is kind of trying to pressure or pester, wear their partner down or something, which, again, I don't recommend. Even if they're not doing that or not trying to do that, and they're just expressing how they feel, the lower desire partner might receive it as pressure. So there's a lot of kind of like communication nuance in this pattern that becomes important. That's what I usually see, right? And so let's talk a little bit more about where people go wrong. Oh, and by the way, side thought. So hopefully you're noticing the sound quality is like fantastic compared to recent episodes. And you might also have noticed, this is basically me making fun of myself here. You might have also noticed that I mentioned how I like upgraded the equipment a few months ago. I'm like, oh, the sound quality is going to be great. We got this great new equipment. And then I listened to a recent episode with a guest who just had gotten like a basic external microphone. And I was like, oh my God, the guest sounds so much better than me. Like, what's happening? Like, why is this happening? I have this like great equipment. And so thank you to my new editor, Norson, who is also an audio engineer and got me straightened out. But basically, I learned that I had all my equipment set up. I could hear myself properly on the headphones. All the dials on my little, device were green and showing that it was powered on. It was plugged into the computer. And I had just not selected it from the audio menu for my microphone. So I was effectively not using any of the new equipment and recording from the mic on my laptop, which is like never anything I would recommend to any podcaster, right? So anyways, we've addressed that. And I think it also goes to show you not to be a perfectionist because the show is doing great despite the audio. So thank you guys for hanging in there with me. And hopefully it sounds like a bajillion times better today. Okay, back to our patterns that we're talking about. Okay, so the higher desire partner is kind of like, I'm frustrated. I love my partner. I want to be patient. How long am I going to have to be patient? Are we actually making any progress on this? Why have they lost interest in sex? And sometimes the higher desire partner kind of knows, like, okay, I know it's not personal, but still kind of hurts. I know they're really stressed. I know they're dealing with some health issues. I know they're a little bit depressed right now and kind of dealing with that, or they're having some side effects from their antidepressant meds. So, I mean, sometimes there's kind of obvious answers, or maybe it's like their parent just died and they're dealing with grief. So it might not be that you're taking it 100% personally, but it could be like there's a little bit of feeling sorry for yourself. There's a little bit of wondering how patient you have to be. And I think along with that, part of the pattern is kind of expecting your partner to make you feel okay. At least this is where we go wrong, right? It's kind of like, oh, if my partner met this need, then I would feel okay. And so anytime we're assigning conditions to us feeling okay or feeling good, that's kind of a losing battle, especially when it's external. Like we cannot control other people, despite however hard we may try. A few of us have those controlling parts, right? Where it's like, oh, if I just do this, maybe they'll shape up. Oh, if I just do this, maybe they'll start, doing the chores. If I reward them, or if I remind them, or if I just nag them enough, right? I don't think anyone has ever made fantastic changes as a result of nagging. Just to be honest. And it's not that I haven't tried it personally, but it doesn't work. Okay, so we don't want to look to someone else to make us feel okay. You might be like, well, Heather, they're my freaking partner. Like they signed up for this. They signed up to like care about my wants and needs. Yes, absolutely. But I will refer you back to a time when you were single, which if you're listening, there's probably some time, some point in your life where you were single and there wasn't someone else that you expected to kind of satisfy your sexual needs. You still might have been frustrated, but you looked inward to resolve that, right? Like maybe I'm going to work on my fantasy life. Maybe I'm going to work on my solo sex. Maybe I'm going to get myself a new toy, right? Maybe you might have been actively looking for sexual partners too. That's valid, but we can't control like when we find that. And so I think what I see a lot in the case of the higher desire partner is that, looking for the feeling of security or validation, or feeling wanted, which kind of goes into the validation category. So just notice that, for you or your partner, if this is a relevant situation for you. The last piece in terms of the high desire partner, where it can get a little bit tricky, is how you express your needs or wants. I also kind of like hate the word needs, like expressing needs in relationships. Like, do we actually have needs? Or are they strong preferences, or maybe they're boundaries? I just feel like needs is not particularly accurate. So saying what you want, saying what would work well for you, right? So if it's kind of like, oh, I just like wish it was like how it was before. I wish that you were like into me, or like, remember when we first got together and like you were all over me and like now you don't care at all. So then you're kind of, your victim-y part is kind of speaking for you instead of your self energy or higher consciousness. That's usually not going to lead to great results either. And it could also be like you're keeping track, right? It could be, I mean, it's been 3 weeks since we've had sex, where there's almost like a tone to how you're saying it. We want to pay attention to tone. It's been 3 weeks. Did you even realize it's been 3 weeks? That's usually not going to put your partner in the mood. So kind of working against yourself unintentionally there. There could be some like blaming your partner. It could be like, well, you're not even working on it. Or like, you said you would do this. You said you would do that. You're not doing it. Again, not going to put your partner in the mood. I mean, are you maybe justified on a logical level if they factually said they would do something and did not? Sure. But again, just notice if you're working against your own best interest there. And then there could be the, every week or every few days bringing it up, are you in the mood yet? Or do you feel like having sex yet? Or like, come on, I'm really in the mood, and it could just kind of wear on your partner, and they might take it in a way that feels like pressure, right? You also might be like a pro at communicating your feelings, right? You might be like, hey, like, you're at where you're at. I totally accept you, low desire partner of mine who I love. However, like, I am feeling a little bit unwanted, and I just love connecting with you, and it feels great. And I feel like so connected, and I feel a little bit more pep in my step. I feel a little more energized, a little more productive even. It kind of is like filling my tank back up. It's like my love language. So even if you were just to say something like really pretty positive and share how much you get from it, like what it means to you, I have no critique there, right? But your partner may receive it in such a way as like, oh man, this like really does a lot for them. I got to get my shit together, So, and that's not your job as the higher desire partner to manage your partner's emotional state and their inner thoughts and how they take things in. It's just something to be aware of. All right. So now let's kind of look at it from the low desire partner's perspective. Okay, so in this scenario, what I often see is you're kind of in the people-pleasing mode, right? So it's kind of like, I need my partner to be okay. Like, they really need this, And I love a supportive partner. I'm not saying don't support your partner or don't care about their sexual needs, right? This podcast would not exist if that's how I felt. But what I will say is when you start to care about your partner's needs at your own expense and at the expense of your own authentic desire, that's where we run into some issues. And yeah, so that's the second piece of the pattern. You're subjugating your own needs, which actually prevents you from feeling authentic desire, right? Because if it's kind of like, I got to do this, like if I'm like even like remotely okay with it, or even if I'm not okay with it, I just gotta go like grin and bear it, and I just gotta suck it up, or I'm just gonna go to a different place in my mind and just kind of get through it, or I just gotta check the box, right? And so when we have that attitude, nowhere is the question, what would really like turn me on? What would help me kind of relax enough that I like just actually want sex, right? And so just because of the mental framework of centering our partner at our own expense, we're actually missing out on the potential for our own desire. And then we're just like preventing solving the actual issue altogether, right? Again, not intentionally. All of these aspects of the dynamic here, these are like parts. So when I talk about internal family systems, we have parts that try to solve things. We have parts that care about others. We have parts that maybe feel insecure or anxious, right? All of these parts have beautiful intentions. But the idea is we don't want our parts running the show. We don't want our defense mechanisms or protective mechanisms running the show. We want our higher consciousness, our self energy, which is calm and confident and feels connected and good enough. We want that running the show. Okay. And then the last piece of the lower desire partner is the idea that they feel like they're failing. So there's some kind of feeling of like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm kind of like broken sexually. I'm not satisfying my partner. I'm not showing up how I want to in the relationship. And I just am feeling like not good enough. Right. And so that kind of puts us in guilt, shame, failure, some very like low vibration emotions, right? That is not a great energy from which to solve an important relationship issue. So a big part of what I do with people in the Pathway to Passion program is help them get into the right mindset and help them gain the emotional mastery to be able to communicate on a nuanced level and to hold space for their partner while also expressing their own emotions. Like, it's not easy. Like, even when I say that, I'm like, this is some advanced skills, you know? Yeah, it takes practice. And that's another piece of the puzzle is like giving you and your partner grace in the process. You know, just listening to this freaking episode, you know, it's like you're doing more than 99% of the population, right? So just seeking out a different perspective. So like, give yourself some credit, give yourself some compassion, do the same for your partner. Realize that even if it's been 3 years in the making, this issue with the mismatched libidos or the feeling of pressure or feeling like sex is a chore, you're just starting the solution process, right? And if you were trying it on your own and it wasn't working, that's because you didn't know this stuff before, right? So it's like you kind of have to have like the right approach dialed in and perhaps the right support for it actually to work. Right? Because a lot of like smart people who have been to lots of therapy and couples counseling and are successful reach out to me, right? And it's not because they're not smart. It's not because they're lousy communicators. They just haven't had this specific type of support and guidance. Okay, so now let's talk about what does it take to reverse these patterns and actually get to a place of feeling excited about your sex life, feeling in touch with your own sexual energy and your own desire, feeling that same thing back from your partner, feeling wanted, feeling sexy, feeling like there's this great energy between you two. Well, we got to change the patterns. So that starts with a few things. So I think the ask for the higher desire partner, again, I'm not going to say any of this is easy, okay, is some patience and some space. Because if the lower desire partner has been feeling pressure, like, pressure is the enemy of sex drive. It is a huge, huge turnoff, right? And so if someone's feeling pressure, we have to get rid of that. And so just kind of giving it some space of like, hey, maybe I don't need it to be a certain way this second. Maybe I can just be open to being into this process and celebrate any little progress in the direction that we want to go. Any little progress in terms of feeling more authentic with where we're both actually at, in terms of desire to be affectionate, to connect sexually, whatever it is, that's the goal, right? So patience, not easy. And how do you get patient if you're feeling sexually frustrated and maybe a little rejected? You got to practice, right? You got to like realize, oh, I'm looking to my partner to meet my need. How can I regulate my own emotional state? And that looks like going back to, oh, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough and that's why my partner's not into me. That thought is making me feel depressed about this. Okay, great. Now we can work on a better feeling thought, right? Or I'm having a part that's feeling like I need this. There's like a sense of urgency and like attachment. It's kind of like a grippy feeling of like, I must have this. I will not be okay without this. But when you're telling yourself that, you're kind of like undermining your own inner security, right? It's like, I will only be okay if it's a sunny day out, or I will only be okay if I get to go on a 5-star luxury vacation, or will only be okay if I get to buy this new car. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is, just that principle of like, I will only be okay if things go this way and those things are out of your control. You are undermining your own internal power. Like most of how we feel comes from our perspective, how we think about things. And so that's the order. And so you can kind of do the cognitive behavioral approach where you're working with your thoughts in a mindful way. And then you can also do the parts work, which is what I love to do with people, because I think it's more of like a felt sense in the body and can kind of help create a shift without it being quite so effortful. There's a little bit more flow to it, I'll say. And so that might look like, okay, so let's talk to that part that feels like I won't be okay unless I have sex however many times a week or, with my partner. It's like, okay, what does that part feel like in your body? It feels tense. It feels grippy. I'm like making, my shoulders go up to my ears and I'm kind of like making fists and I'm like restless and antsy. So this is just an example, but the idea is you would identify what part is getting in the way of you being able to be patient, and you would identify how does that feel in your body. Right. And so this is, again, a lot of the work that I do with people in the Pathway to Passion program. So it takes time. These are skills, right? But then you learn to be like, okay, so my partner can do their own thing and I can still be okay. They might not be ready for sex yet, but I still know that I'm hot and sexy and worth it. And then maybe there's some behavioral changes too. Maybe you do some more solo care. Maybe you get a massage so you still have more physical touch in your life. You look at what is within my control to do instead of being frustrated about what isn't. Then what happens on the flip side of it with the lower desire partner is they're kind of like, oh, sigh of relief. I have space. I have this partner who's being patient with me. I don't feel like I'm in a pressure cooker anymore, right? Like now I actually can ask that question, And again, sometimes the issue is that the high desire partner is maybe being a little pressuring and not saying things in the right way, that it's going to be received well. And then we work on that. And again, that's a skill too. But sometimes they are saying things well, like I mentioned before, and the low desire partner is just taking it in like, I'm terrible. I'm letting them down. I feel all this guilt. Guess what? Those are also parts. Those are also thoughts. So we do the same work, just with different thought patterns and different emotional parts, right? Where you identify it. You learn to be kind to the part of you that feels guilty or that feels like obligated or that feels pressured. And we learn, what does that part need to relax? What does that part need to feel safe? Right? And then we can start asking, what would actually get me in the mood? I don't know. Maybe there's some stress in my life and we need to get a babysitter an extra day a week or a cleaning person or a nanny or something like that. Maybe it's that your whole life is about taking care of other people, whether it's like I got to work and I got to be the breadwinner, or I got to watch the kids and and I got to take care of my spouse and, or my aging parents who have health issues. They're like, there could be a lot of different things, right? Kind of pulling on you and like wanting your attention. And it's a practice to shift into receiving mode, right? And this is actually also reminding me of the episode we had with Dr. Betty White about the wheel of consent. So she talks about kind of being able to give and take, and also to receive and kind of ask for what we want. And that's another practice, right? So sometimes I'll give people exercises to help them practice that, or I'll give them homeworks to be like, just go spend some adult time with a friend, right? Go get a pedicure and spend some time away from your child, right? This does not take away from how much you love your child. Sometimes, mom guilt is a real thing, especially where, I see this more with moms. I don't know why I think mom guilt seems to be more of a thing than dad guilt, but I'm sure there's exceptions out there. But if you're having that, to kind of be like, can I start realizing that like, not only am I not a bad parent by taking this time for myself, I come back way more refreshed. I'm less snippy and irritable with my kids. I actually have more to give, and I can at least entertain the idea of being more intimate with my partner, right? Sometimes we're just so tapped out and there's so much output and like nothing is really filling our tank back up. And so even just asking yourself that question, what fills my tank back up? right? Like, so for me, it's being outside, being in nature, laughing, spending time with friends. It could be simple, like cuddling my cats, right? Reading a romance book or something that's not for like learning or education or productivity or like quote unquote purposeful, that's just for enjoyment. So those are all small ways we can kind of start shifting that energy. And then we can, really start at least leaning into sexual desire. It might start more like affection. And I'm not going to be able to give you guys like all of the tools and secrets I use with people because we just don't have time for it. But it might just look like cuddling. Let's start making time for connection that way. Let's start making time for a deeper emotional conversation so we can feel connected that way. Maybe you make time for some solo sex or playing with a toy, and you might realize, okay, what even helps me get in the mood, right? Maybe it's a romance book. Maybe it's, watching a romantic movie. Maybe it's just feeling like you're in your own body and you're really present in your own body. Maybe you put some music on. Maybe it is spending time in nature or anything else that feels, sensual or embodied to you, or that feels taboo and exciting that way, right? Like everyone's going to have something different that does it for them. And that's where I think it can be helpful to kind of write down even and like map out like what gets you in the mood. What are the prerequisites to you getting in the mood? So a lot of times the prerequisites are kind of more work-life balance, being able to receive, having adult time for yourself. And then we look at getting in the mood, and it might look like emotional connection or a sexual fantasy or some flirtation during the day where there's anticipation building up, right? So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. But that's how we get the ball rolling. That's how we shift the pattern from we're both frustrated or guilty or there's pressure and it's just kind of like, like we're smart people. We don't know how to solve this, but we need to figure it out because we love each other, and that's where I can help too. So I hope that this was helpful today. If you do feel like you need some more personalized attention with this, I actually have a new offer that I'm doing for people. So not just the big Pathway to Passion package. I have a new one called, appropriately, the quickie. So just like a quickie session with sex, this is like a quickie coaching experience where you get a 20-minute assessment, you get a full hour with me, and then you get a 1-page report of my top recommendations for you. So this will at least help you get unstuck out of the rut and have a game plan and start shifting the momentum. So if that's something that you're interested in, we will pin a comment with the link to that on YouTube, and we will also include that link in the show notes. So I would love to support you guys with that. Thank you everybody for listening and supporting the show. This is super fun for me. Hopefully it's fun for you too. And we will catch you next week with another episode of Ask a Sex Therapist. Bye everybody.